On a quiet September morning in 2002, a man wandered through the dense woods of Mount Waryeong in Daegu, South Korea, searching for acorns. It was supposed to be a peaceful outing, but as he reached a shaded clearing, his foot struck something hard beneath the dirt. Curious, he brushed away the leaves and froze. A small human skull stared back at him from a shallow grave. Scattered nearby were torn pieces of children's clothing, tangled with brittle bones. What he had uncovered was not just a tragedy. It was the horrifying end to one of the country's most haunting mysteries. A mystery that began over a decade earlier, when 5 boys walked into these same woods and were never seen again. On March 26, 1991, in the city of Daegu, South Korea, 5 boys from Seongseo Elementary School, their homes for what was supposed to be a simple childhood adventure. It was a local holiday due to elections, and the boys, aged between 9 and 13, had planned to go to Mount Waryeong to collect salamander eggs. It was a popular activity at the time, something kids did with joy and curiosity. The forested hill was just a few kilometers from their neighborhood, and none of the parents thought twice when the boys left with their jackets tied around their waists and slingshots in hand. They never came back. As night fell and the boys failed to return, panic gripped the families. Parents called neighbors, teachers, anyone who might know where they were. Police were contacted, and within hours, search efforts began. The initial assumption was simple. The boys had gotten lost in the mountain. What followed, however, was one of the most haunting missing child cases in South Korea's modern history. Over the following weeks, thousands of volunteers, soldiers, and police officers combed Mount Waryeong. Helicopters scanned the terrain from above. Search dogs sniffed through brush and undergrowth. Posters were plastered across the country. The national media covered the case with relentless urgency. Yet, no sign of the boys was found. No clothing, no footprints, no evidence that they had ever been there. Rumors began to swirl. Some said the boys had run away to Seoul. Others speculated they had been kidnapped by someone who lived in the area. Some claimed to have seen a suspicious man offering candy near the school. But no theory could explain how 5 boys could disappear together without a trace. Time passed. The case remained open, but the leads dried up. The parents, desperate for answers, refused to give up. They traveled to every province when someone reported a sighting. They appeared on television, pleaded in newspapers, and knocked on every door that might offer a clue. The pain of not knowing became unbearable. The city, and eventually the nation, began to refer to them as the Frog Boys, a nickname given because they were originally said to be out hunting frogs, though it was actually salamander eggs. For 11 years, the case remained a mystery. Then, on September 6, 2002, a man collecting acorns on Mount Waryeong made a chilling discovery. Near a shallow grave covered by leaves and rocks, he found skeletal remains. At first, he assumed they were animal bones, but when he noticed pieces of children's clothing tangled in the dirt, bright colors faded by time and weather, he called the authorities. The scene was cordoned off, and forensic teams arrived to excavate the area. Over the next few days, the worst fears of the families were confirmed. The remains belonged to the 5 missing boys. The same boys who had vanished more than a decade earlier. Their bones were intertwined, suggesting they had died together. Some were missing shoes. Others still had pieces of jackets or shirts. Initially, police theorized they had frozen to death after getting lost, but forensic analysis revealed skull fractures on several of the boys. Some injuries appeared to have been caused by blunt force trauma, perhaps from rocks or metal objects. The idea that they had merely gotten lost and died from exposure no longer held. The families demanded answers. How could the boys have been found in a spot that had been searched dozens of times? How had their bodies remained undiscovered for so long? Then came more disturbing revelations. The positioning of the remains, the depth of the shallow grave, and the patterns of the injuries all suggested one horrifying possibility. The boys had been murdered. Some investigators proposed that the children had stumbled upon something they shouldn't have, perhaps a criminal operation or an illegal dumping site, and were killed to silence them. Others believed it was the work of a predator who had lured them one by one. But no physical evidence pointed to a suspect. There were no fingerprints, no tools, no DNA. Whoever did this had left nothing behind. The public was outraged. The authorities had failed to protect the boys, failed to find them, and now, even with their remains uncovered, failed to explain what had happened. Conspiracy theories emerged, accusations that the initial search had been sabotaged or that someone powerful had a hand in the crime. But with no solid evidence, everything remained speculation. In the years that followed, the Frog Boys case continued to haunt South Korea. Documentaries were made. Books were written. New theories surfaced. One investigator suggested that the boys had been tied up before death. Another believed they had been poisoned. But none of it could be proven. In 2006, the statute of limitations expired. No one would be tried for their murder, even if a suspect emerged. The families were devastated. They had waited 15 years for justice, and now it was legally out of reach. Despite that, they never stopped seeking the truth. Yoo Chul-won's father famously camped on Mount Waryong for years after the disappearance, returning to the site even after the remains were found. He believed the boys had encountered someone they knew, someone they trusted, perhaps an adult from the neighborhood. Maybe they had been called over under false pretenses. Maybe they had been told there was a new shortcut, or a secret trail, or even an animal to chase. Maybe they had followed blindly, thinking it was just part of the adventure. Today, the site where the boys were found is marked by a small memorial. Visitors leave flowers, toys, and handwritten notes. School children learn about the case as a cautionary tale. Parents hold their children a little tighter. And somewhere, perhaps still walking freely, is the person who took 5 innocent lives and left a nation in mourning. The story of the Frog Boys is more than a mystery. It's a tragedy etched into the fabric of a country. It reminds us that even in broad daylight, even among the innocent, evil can wait in silence. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. We bring you the darkest, realest, and most mysterious true crime stories from around the world. Stay safe, stay curious,